my screen is visible.
Yep.
So today we'll just have a look at the creation of a document and converting that document to a EBOM within VMP. So firstly, if you go to the customizations and go to logistics general PLM, under document management, you will find most of the customizations required in order to create a document. So this is generic to other document creations as well. What you normally do, maybe when you're creating a document of DMO type, almost the same configurations, but we will be using a different type for PEO, or rather for the visual file that we are going to use here. So we will see what types has to be maintained. And the process is that we have a visual file now. So we have a VDS file. So we will be starting off from there, right? The VDS file contains all the materials, the required metadata and everything. So when we create a document, we will be creating it with a different type specific for VMP. So in order to create the type, you can go to the document management, control data that you see here, and maintain the document type, that is define DMS document types that you see here. So we have a lot of document types, and mostly DMO is the commonly used one. So you can copy the same thing, and you will have to create a document type called VED, Visual Enterprise. And here we are just checking all the revision assignment, version assignment, change, doc authorization, etc. These has to be checked. So if I look into the details, this is language dependent descriptions. This you can maintain what was required. If I go to the document, you will maintain what you see here, the status. So this you can maintain for everything the status with the exact configuration shown here. So this would be the same. And if you go to the object links, again, we will be linking into these objects, so you can maintain these as well. The class document, materials, WBS, sales orders, and etc. And others are just descriptions that is maintained here, so this is not required. So we will be maintaining, or we will be creating a VED material document type, and we will be assigning document status and defining the object links. So these are what is required. So this VED is the type that we will use when we have to create a document for the visual scenario. So when you create a document and you're calling it inside VMP, and say suppose you create an EBOM for it. Now when you do an EBOM to MBOM handover of the visual file, I do not plan everything as it is in the EBOM, right? So this VED has kind of my EBOM structure. So I do not plan everything that is in my EBOM when I'm planning the MBOM. Say I plan a couple of assemblies and I remove the other assemblies. So my visual hierarchy of the visual structure will also look different, because only few are planned. So when you save that MBOM, or when you are creating that MBOM, a different document is created for the planned MBOM, or the planned MBOM hierarchy. So this document will be created of the type PEO. So you will have to create a document of PEO type. So by default, the VMP searches for a document of PEO type. Otherwise, you might get a dump or error. So PEO is what you need to as well create. So again, the configurations for this would remain the same. Define the document statuses and the object links. So this would remain the same, but you will have to create two document types. One is PEO and one is VED. So these are the two important things. Now, if I parallelly open my VMP, so I will try to load a visual file. So I have created a document. Let me open that first. So I have created a document whose name is this, an external ID that I've given, and the document type that I'm using is VED. So VED is what you will have to use, and you can give the document path and version. So if you go to the originals, you'll see that I have linked a visual file here. So if you have your viewer installed, you will be able to see the visual file via the document. So what are the things that is required when you're creating a document? First is give any description and attach the visual file. So the visual file here is of type VDS, and I have attached it to this document. You will be, if you have the visual viewer installed, visual enterprise viewer, you will be able to see the hierarchy here. So if I look at the hierarchy, it has, this is how it's going to look like, and it has a couple of reused BOMs. So the intake header, INTKHDR that you see here is a reused assembly. So we have two intake headers that you see in the visual as well. So even though it is the same material, these are two different visual instances. So you can see that when I select this instance, a different node is getting selected, and not both the nodes within the intake header. So the material is same, but the visual instances are different because we have two different intake headers here. And so this is a reused assembly, right? And if you look at, so this is a multi-level assembly, you can see that under intake ASM, I have this filter housing ASM, and then a throttle body. Under throttle body, I have some components here. But if you look at the component list as well, Okay, so this M6 X40, the component ending with this you can see that it is being repeated. So these are reused components. Again, it's got hung, but if I could select and show you, you can see that again that on selection, different instances will get highlighted and not the same instances. So every instance added here, so individual for every material that is available. Okay, it's a bit slow. All right, so this is how our hierarchy will look like within the visual file. If I also just let me try loading it again. So if I select every node and if I scroll down here, I can see the section of it is marked as cat metadata and the other section is marked as SAP metadata. Any questions?
So when this material is created, I mean, is it created interactively from here or what is
This
the
file?
No, for example, here on property it shows cat metadata and below that it shows SAP.
No, this is not, we have not yet created any material. This is just the VDS file. All this is coming from the VDS file directly. So right now I have a material, but in a flow, I'm creating the document and calling the VDS file. There is no material created yet. Okay, so yeah, so when you select every node, you will find its related metadata. This is again coming from the visual file. So the cat metadata, if you have a look at, this is what is our visual instance related data, and this is what will map it to the visual instances. So this is required and no changes will be required there. The SAP metadata that you see, this is what will be used when we create the document to EBOM handover. So this will be metadata with the name material will be identified as material, BOM item change number will be identified as a change number, BOM item effectivity values will be identified as effectivity values. So for our scenarios, this is what is required. But of course, if more metadata are required, you need to find the related metadata name and you can add more values here as well. So this is how your file will look like. And so we will create a document, add VDS file, and then we will add, so you will not add any BOM data, but under material master, you will add the header material ID. So the header material ID, you have to create it and link it to this document. So when you're linking the visual file, this is not checking if there is any material existing or anything. It's just like linking any maybe a PDF file. So it's just the action is just to attach this file to the document. That is all it is going to do within the document management codes. Post linking your visual file in the document. You need to create individual materials for every instances. Otherwise, what happens when we do a document to EBOM handover? Of course, the materials will not be available in the system and you will not be able to proceed, or you will have to just completely unplan the material. So there are checks that happen within VMP, but not outside of VMP. So you need to create all your materials with the exact material ID that is defined in the document, in the visual file here. And then once you have all your materials created, the header material, which is in our case intake ASM, so you take that header material number and you link it to the document. So we have our document created here, and we're creating it with the VED scenario. Sorry, the VED document type. Yeah. So let's see how to create an EBOM from the visual document that we have. So right now, it's even though you're looking at a structure here, within the system, there is no structure. The structure is defined within a visual file. If I maybe search in the BOM app for this BOM, I will not find anything. So this is just a visual representation and nothing that is defined within the system. So now I will go ahead and create a document with the, or I will create a planning scope where I can convert a document to the EBOM.
I have one question. So in here we don't have any facility to change, correct? We are just seeing whatever data is coming in the form of VDS file, correct?
Yes.
We can't change anything. We don't have any option here.
No, here we do not have any option. So this is just a document, right? So if you link a, let's say PDF file, we will not have any option to change anything. We are just linking it, which means that we can link it now and call this later anywhere else. That is the idea here. So
is there any possibility that we can create a VDS file on our own?
You can create it if you have a CAD file, and if you have an author, you can create it on your own. You need to have the related CAD file firstly. Yeah.
Sandra, I mean, ideally, the material code should be created using this interface, right? PDMI or some other interface. So that is what I mean. I don't know.
Yeah.
We are saying, you know, that this is going to help the engineers and others to simplify their master data life at least.
So PDMI is outside of PEO, right? So you can use whatever is feasible outside of PEO to create the data. So right now we are kind of saying that we are already in PEO and we are taking it forward from there. But outside PEO, you can take a call on what is best for your particular scenario. So if PDMI can be used to create the master data, of course that can be done. There are no restrictions there.
But so now PEO itself does not have the capability to create master data.
No. PEO does not have the capability. So from PEO, like if I am already within PEO and if I'm starting with, let's say this with a visual file, I'll have to create all this manually. There is no other capability within PEO for now.
So any other program or some mass upload program or given so that will simplify at least it can create the basic data 1 to classification at least for the user.
No, right now, like maybe that I've mentioned before, we have the migration report, which means that data from existing external system can be migrated to PEO. But within PEO right now, there is no mass data creation reports or anything available. No, this is not available.
So master data migration report will help to take the legacy system data into SAP, or will it help in all the cases?
It will help in migrating the legacy data to the PEO data, which means that the legacy data is for sure going to be in the usage 1 or 2, right? And it's not going to be a non-versioned BOMs. So that will be converted to usage E, V, and the version BOM scenario. So that migration is what we're talking about.
So in that case, the PO is not solving the pain point of creating the master, at least material master data.
See, PO does not come into picture for the master data creation, right? PO comes into picture assuming that we have the master data and we are starting with the engineering part. That is where PO comes into picture. So yeah, I mean, it does not address it, but we are also not really providing a solution for the master data part here.
I mean, out of your experience, I mean, how do you see customers are doing? I mean, do they go for it? Because this is going to be a multi-level BOM, and depending on the complexity of the product, the number of materials again will vary. And again, here the chance of mistake of creating the material with wrong or not required material types, that is all there. So from your experience, what customers use for creating this master data?
Firstly, the chances of a customer creating directly in the system or in the PO system is very less. It will be created via or migrated or created via the PDMI. So any interface or integration is used to create the data. The chances of creating it directly within the PO is very minimal. So at least, of course, all of our customers are existing SAP customers, or maybe who they're not new to the whole PLM world, right? So they will already have the data. So they are mostly going to migrate the data or use PDMI here. So that is probably why this is not yet handled. That we do not have any customers creating manual data as of now.
Okay, so they are having some other tool to do that, either PDMI or other thing.
Yeah, so we will also cover the migration report part because that will come within the PO aspect where we are providing a solution to migrate from PLM system to the PO system. That also we will see how the report will help us here.
So what generally happens for the greenfield implementation where the customer has never used at least SAP relevant PLM tools is something, some other tools are there?
I mean, so they will have any other PLM tool, you're saying, right?
Yeah, for example, in our case, one customer that you're handling, so they used to have Event Shuttle, the third-party application. Okay, but over the period of time, that knowledge filter happened, and the people who implemented that and those who were using that, it is no more used. Now all interactively they are creating the master data, material master data. It's all full of mistakes. The mistakes starts from the unit of measure. Even the base unit of measures are wrong in many cases.
Okay.
This is a major business pain point for them. People are creating the material, but it is always they use referenced material, and then just keep on pressing enter, create. Only the stage description, wrong material, wrong base unit of measure, and all that. So this is a challenge.
Yeah. Okay, see here the solutions are definitely not within PO for this, but if you firstly addressing the part where you say customers using any third-party PLM system, it could be Team Center, Windchill, etc. So here is where the PDMI will come into picture, where you can still induce PDMI to integrate third-party to any SAP S4HANA application. So since PO comes under that, you can definitely continue using PDMI for PO as well. But the issue that you are talking about, that is definitely not under PO preview, but I would say it's more master data related issue, and we have solutions like the master data management, master data governance, where we say of course, any company would have a lot of unused or duplicate data which is not going to be used. So all the solutions like master data governance will come into picture, which will govern your data, which will kind of consolidate and redefine and make sure you have pure valid data available in your system all the time. So that is you will have to use a totally different solution for that. And of course, PO will not help you here in the master data related issues.
But PDMI is again limited, right? I mean, PDMI is offering some 4 interfaces with 3D experience, Dassault 3D experience, and then what is that? Windchill, Siemens Team Center, and this SAP Team Center. Only 4 interfaces are available. I mean, again, in our case, the customer is using this one, SolidWorks.
Okay.
That is another question. This PDMI can be used with any of the authoring tool or PLM tool.
Right now, like you mentioned, PDMI is limited to a couple of tools, right? The Windchill, Team Center, 3D experience kind of thing. But for SolidWorks, I can figure out for individual applications what is it. But yeah, like you said, PDMI is limited to a couple of tools that we have. Yes. So here we can also use the migration data report, where PDMI is of course the easier option that you will have. But if that doesn't work, you can use the migration report here. Maybe we will cover that as well.
Final question: this migration report is available on both the cases. Is it available on premise, and is it again can be used on cloud?
So PO right now is only offered in the on-premise, so it is not yet available on cloud. So right now it will be only in the on-premise solution.
Okay. Okay.
Sure. SolidWorks is owned by Dassault Systems, so I think we can work on the integration with respect to SolidWorks.
It is not showing in the license application.
Okay, we'll check on that. Because the parent organization is Dassault Systems.
Yeah, from Dassault, they are offering interface with 3D experience, not with SolidWorks. SolidWorks is a different tool, though the parent company is same.
Okay, fine, we'll check on that.
Okay, so yeah, like maybe just to rewind what we just discussed, the PO will not handle our master data related issues. For that, we will have to definitely integrate with other applications that will provide a solution here. But here we are kind of looking into from the engineering aspect and starting from there. And we are not really providing, at least for now, we are not providing a solution for the master data aspect. So now that we have a visual file, you see that for this file, there are no change number and effectivity values. So I'm just pulling out a file with the same data with the change number and effectivity value so that we can see the unitized scenario here. So if you look at this example, we have a effectivity value defined here. So for the metadata 2.999. And because I am passing, you can either maintain the effectivity value when you're creating the BOMs, but the challenge there would be that you have to kind of choose everything individually and you have to edit the BOM and maintain the effectivity value, which in the newer releases, we have an option of selecting multiple instances and editing the BOM, but at least in the till 2020, you have to do everything individually. So it will of course get a bit challenging that if you have to maintain effectivity values for every instance, which is why we can also give it directly in the visual file. But if you're giving it directly in the visual file, you need to maintain a change number. So if we were giving giving the effectivity values in the VMP, if you were editing the BOMs there and saying this is the effectivity value, then the change number would be, if the change number is already existing for that specific effectivity range, then the change number will be automatically picked. If it is a new effectivity range, then the change number would be created. So if this is kind of the generic change number that we have because let's say 12999 is what is being used frequently. So if you look at this change number, this is the effectivity maintained here, and maybe like what we saw in our unitization session, the effectivity type you can see is being picked up here. And if I go to the effectivity type, you see that this is the model and unit from and unit 2 that can be used. So model should be M1, unit from 1 to 9999 can be used with this change number. So this should be given manually if you're giving it or if you're using the visual file and defining the effectivity. And for others, again, you can just check. These are on instance levels. You can see if your effectivity is coming up. So we do have different effectivities maintained here. Should be fine. So you can see that the change number is the same. So this will cause a bit of discrepancy in the VMP. So we can also just see how it is going to work. So let's keep it the same. So you can see that the change number is linked to 1 to 9999, but the effectivity value is 1 to 500. So let's go to our VMP. So now what we have done is we have created materials. We have created our document of this one of VED type, and we have assigned our visual file there. We have assigned the header material there, and all the material for all the instances are created here. So now we will look into creating a planning scope. Now we are converting a document. We are converting a document to a EBOM, right? So we need to have a planning scope which will support that. So the planning scope which we used for, if you remember, for variant configuration was 06. So now we need to have a planning scope which will support the creation of document to or a document to EBOM. So if you look at the planning scenarios that we have, firstly, the file that we have is non-configurable. So we can look into the target material type, which is marked as non-configurable. So we have one here, and these. The second thing that we need is our source type is not a EBOM. So when we created a planning scenario for variant configuration, we gave the source type as EBOM because we already had an EBOM existing. Right now, we do not have an EBOM. So our source type is a document. So it's non-configurable and a document. So the planning scenarios that you can use are 01, or you can use 21 that you see. So if you look at the change here, here it is marked valid for routing and plant is marked as required. So when I create an EBOM, in the EBOM, I would have to mandatorily define a plant or mention a plant. If I use the planning scope scenario 2.1, it is not mandatory for me to provide a plant. So if you're talking about an ideal scenario, most of the time EBOMs will not have a plant link to it. So that is also handled here, where you can create an EBOM without a plant. But when you're creating an MBOM, plants are going to be mandatory here. Teams. Okay, so coming back to this, so we have two scenarios that we can use, 2.1 and 0.1. The difference would be the routing. This can be used further for routing, or routing can be called here, and the plant is required. So let's use document 0.1, give the planning scenario. And my header BOM here was this. You're seeing the BOM data here because there is a already existing BOM created for this example. So when you're creating for the first time, this will of course be blank, and you do not have to give anything manually here. We give only the material master. So our source is this, and our document is this with type VED and part 000 and version 00. This is my source information. In the target, if you see that the target panel is the target plant is enabled, so I will give a plant value here, and my EBOM usage is going to be E as we're creating an EBOM. So now I just want to show you if I had selected the other planning scenario, 21. So you can see that the plant target plant is not enabled. So here the EBOMs will be created without a plant, without linking it to a plant. Okay, coming back to this, now we have entered all our values. The change number is not required as we are using version BOMs. This is required in the traditional BOM creation scenario. As for PO, we'll be using the version BOM, so change number is not required. So click on Save Start Planning. And you can notice here that the BOM status is by default picked as 1, which is active. Okay, so this you can see is my visual file that is being retrieved directly from the VDS file that we have attached. And this is the hierarchy that is coming up. So you can see that we have our reused assembly and all the components that we had given, all the reused components, all individual components, we have everything here. So let's look a bit into what are the functionalities available when we are creating a EBOM out of a document. So if you look at the functionalities available in a EBOM to MBOM handover scenario in VMP, there are a lot more than what is available in the document to EBOM creation, right? So firstly, we have our assemblies defined, and this is just the definition that is being retrieved from the file. There are no checks happening here. So if you look at our options to plan now if I plan it to the target, it is creating a EBOM, right? So if I look at the options to plan a EBOM, there is something called plan as designed. There is something called plan as expanded. If I choose the header material and click on plan as designed, it will just move everything that is underneath this. It will just move it here. Now I will undo it. Instead, what I will do is I will check the header again, and I will say plan as expanded. So under the air filter housing, you can see that the throttle body, which was a assembly here and which had components under it, is planned as a single instance. So this is a instance, right? This is instance. When I say, I mean this is the leaf node of the hierarchy that we have, of the visual hierarchy that we have. So this is planned as an instance. That is because when I say plan has expanded, if I expand any of the assemblies, only that will be moved to the target. So now I've expanded the air intake and I've expanded air filter housing assembly. So only those two will get moved. And since I've not expanded these assemblies, this will be moved as an instance. So I've not expanded the intake headers as well. So you can see that these are also moved as instances. So we will see what this is. But this is kind of the two direct planning methods that you have. And for any immediate action that you've done by mistake, you can use the undo option or the redo option. But using too many undos and redos will cause issues. So only for the immediate, to revert the immediate action, you can use this function. So now I am choosing the header assembly and planning it here, right? So in the target, if you notice, so this is the description. So let me add to make it the material here. So like maybe what I've shown before, you can select any panel and choose what columns will be displayed here. So these are the metadata available within VMP with respect to the file, if the file supports that particular metadata or not. Okay, let me, okay, fine. So for this, you can see that in the target, even though I've not planned anything, by default, the header material of what is available in the source will be added as a sub-assembly or as an assembly in the target. So that when I do a plan as designed, it will know that this is my starting point, which is what the VMP does. So it knows that this is my starting point and it can plan everything underneath it. Now, say for example, I want to, for whatever reason, select only the throttle body, which is a sub-assembly here, and I click on plan as designed. So this will get planned as a parallel assembly. You can of course move it back inside this header assembly in the working panel. But right now, since I've chosen only the sub-assembly and I've set plan as designed, it will get moved to the target as a parallel assembly, and it does not come under the header assembly. So that is also possible. You can have, or you can plan parallel assemblies as well. So you say, I want to pick any, of course, the parallel assembly should be part of the source that is already been shown here, but you can choose any sub-assembly from the source and say plan it as a parallel assembly. So this is also possible. Okay, do we have any questions so far?
Sandra, how the handover will happen for very complex assemblies? So let us say there's 4 to 5 level of BOM, and out of that one level is going to be some sort of subcontracting going to happen on that. But yes, there is a separate BOM in it. Okay, let me take the example directly. For example, VFDs are there, or this HMIs. For that, the handover is happening from engineering to manufacturing, and the cabling for that should be done outside through some subcontractor.
Okay.
So again, here the full handover should happen, or as the product evolves, the handover should happen.
See, first, in the example that you're saying, a full handover should happen. And like we spoke about the 150% BOM. So this will be our 150% BOM. And based on the further actions will be taken outside of VMP. But within VMP, you can, I'm not saying you should, but then you can plan the entire BOM as it is for the MBOM.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a 150% BOM, right? So you're planning the whole structure, irrespective of what your operations would be outside or what your order creation would be outside. So you are planning a 150% BOM or the super BOM here.
So in our case, we are using 150% BOM with effectivity, unitization. Right?
Yes, here we are using unitization. Yes.
Okay. In case of EBC, this will change.
Yeah, in case of BC, instead of the effectivity, you will have option of maintaining variant configuration.
Okay. And now you are having all this demo in KS4, our server?
No, it is not on case 4. So there are issues with respect to creation of classes and everything. So it's causing a lot of discrepancies. So this is on a different system.
Okay, so if you want to practice, then we need to create that data, relevant data in 1909, our KS4.
Yes, you need to anyhow create all the materials, right, based on the visual file. I've already given the visual file. I hope it's shared with you. So you need to anyhow create the material. So you need to follow the same process, create material.
So it's only going to be material or classification also?
From your side, you need only the materials. You need material with extended to a specific plant, any plant that you're using. So you can try it out from your end as part of hands-on. And of course, if you're stuck somewhere, we can of course address it in our sessions.
Okay, sure.
Right. Okay, any other questions?
Can we play with the structure of the BOM itself here? For example, this total that you use. So if we hand over partly only the upper level of BOM, and then during the handover of lower level of BOM, can we play the level of the BOM itself, like moving, let us say, from third level to second level and other things?
That would not be possible, but let's try it.
In this case, then what's the difference between EBOM and MBOM? I mean, we were thinking, I was thinking at least, EBOM is something we just flattened the BOM. We will not go as per the manufacturing structure of that BOM. It is going to flatten.
Correct. Correct. I mean, it does not mandatorily have to be flattened, but you do have a lot of functionalities. We are still looking at the EBOM creation. So this is the EBOM, right? So
EBOM.
ideally from the visual file, you will plan it as it is, a EBOM. You will not make any changes for the EBOM. So we will of course look into the MBOM scenario and we will look at the flattening scenarios there. So to address your question, yes, in the EBOM side, you can, because this is a document, you can actually, move it across, move the levels across from one to another. This can be done. So we are still in the EBOM creation part.
And where does this work instructions will come in picture?
Work instruction would come towards the part where we cover the routing. So when we look at routing, we will look at the work
Again,
instruction.
the work instruction should be part of VDS file.
We can use the VDS file there as well. Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah, we are in the EBOM creation part, document to EBOM. So here, just I want to make sure a few basics of vemp are covered. So you see, we have few icons, which is different. And going forward, you might find few different icons as well. So when we, it is not always possible to know what the icon means. So there is something called as node type legend, which will say what is the description for each of the icon. Based on that, if I have a look, this is a assembly, this icon, and this what you see for filter casing is an instance. That is the node leaf level instances. And others we can have a look at it going forward. Okay, so now let me delete these two. So you can also delete, replan what you've already planned by deleting. So when I deleted those two, which was under air intake assembly, and I moved it to target, you can see that it got planned as a subassembly. So this is an expected scenario. If you delete any assembly from the header node, and if you commit the changes, it will get added to the target as a parallel assembly. You can delete it from there as well. So I will delete it for us now. And since it's a document to EBOM, I'm just going to do a plan as design. So I'm saying I want it exactly as I have it in my VDS file. Now, if you look at this node, which is a kind of a blue icon, a bit of a blue icon here. So what does this mean? It says it's a BOM item. What it means is that if there are any reused components or assemblies, it will group all of it. So when I'm planning the EBOM, it is grouping. Since intake header is reused, it will group that and it will create a group node here. Similarly, if I look at my other assemblies, I had weld nut and there were a lot of 4 reused instances under weld nut. So you can see that this got grouped. So this is again one functionality where if there are any similar material, then it gets grouped under a similar group node. So this going forward, since it is grouped, you will not be able to edit individual instances. So you will be able to make changes only at the group node level. This is one thing that is handled. So I have my structure created. This I'm doing a plan as design, and now I will not make any changes to it, but I say save and reload. Yes, Pavan, any question?
Yes. So in this example, let us say this airbox upper.
Airbox upper, okay.
Yes, this BOM has been migrated and we have an EBOM. Now let us say we are sending the entire structure from top to bottom, and in that we find this assembly also. How the system behaves?
So you're saying for airbox upper there's already a EBOM, but you're planning everything what we did just now. Then you see here that now since I saved, my EBOMs are created, and you see for each sub-assembly there is a message coming up. So for airbox upper, it says that airbox upper is created with alternate 01 version 0001. So if you're creating again in the same plant, it will create a new alternate. It will not stop you from creation, but it will create a new alternate of that same EBOM.
Okay.
Yeah. So right now alternate one.
Alternative because okay, we are pushing it once again, but it is not a new version, correct?
No, it is not a new version. So
okay. Now my question is, when will be alternative will be created and version will be created? Version is like if I change any component or any slight changes, it is creating version. So
okay, so that level of check does not happen based on what changes you're doing. So when a version is created, right now this planning scope of 2 that is given here has alternate 1 linked to it, right? So if I reopen the same planning scope and I make any changes, it will always make changes to the alternate 1, and it will keep creating multiple versions. If I create an altogether new planning scope, there also I can call the same BOM. There is no restriction. If I do that, then a new alternate will be created for the same BOM.
Okay. So that means if I use a new planning scope, then the alternative will be created, correct?
Yes, correct. So we can see that here. So you can always see which alternate is being called based on the, you can see the metadata here. So if I keep changing, if after releasing this BOM, if I keep changing this, new versions will be created. So now if I look at the status, it is in process. So I will say mark for release all, which will, I can either mark for release, which will mark for release only the selected assembly. So you can see others are not marked for release, or I can just say mark for release all. It will mark for release all the sub-assemblies. Whatever is under it, everything will get marked for release. And now I can save and reload again.
Sandra, I have one more question. So what is the best condition in which we create a new planning scenario?
It would be when you want to create a whole new alternate. You're not making any minor changes, but you're making a more definite major change to the BOM. Then you can create a new planning scope.
So in case of major change, I will create a new alternate.
Yes. For minor changes, you will of course you'll just create a new version. Right? Maybe you're editing some. Yeah.
So that means only the designer who is aware of the changes can take a decision. Not any IT guy or any user cannot take the decision. Correct?
Yes. This is only pretty much on the end user. So they have to take a call on if they want to alternate or a version. So there are no system.
Should have design knowledge saying that this document is having major changes. So I will create a new planning scenario and I will create a new alternative. Correct?
Yes. True.
Okay. So business decision. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay then.
All right. So you can see that you'll find all the description which says the respective alternate and the version has been released. So we have a released EBOM created now of alternate 1. So this is how you create EBOM from the available VDS file. So I hope this part is cleared. And since we are just doing a EBOM to VDS, EBOM to document to EBOM, we will not in most of the just planned it as it is. But when we're doing an EBOM to MBOM, we will see how what are the options that we have and how to plan a MBOM.
So
Okay,
in
so
this VDS file,
yes.
we are seeing only the material number, which is coming from external system. Can
Yes.
it have a unit of measure also?
Unit of measure, when you created the material, you would have given a unit of measure, right?
Right.
So that will be linked because it is not coming from the VDS file, but it will come directly from the created materials.
So that is one gap what Shoaib is trying to say. Say, for example, if there is a facility that the VDS file is also having a unit of measure, then we can expect that the system can check, okay, whatever material master you have created, at least while creating the EBOM, system would be checking up.
Yeah, Sandra, when you're taking the overview session, you told some markups will be available. So those markups will not be available in this one.
This is not a PMI file, so there are no markups available here. So this, if you want a PMI file, you need to have a special file created for that, which I can show you, but since it's way more complicated, you need to have it coming from the CAD files, and we do not have such examples. So I can show you an example, but we will not be able to work a lot on it.
Okay.
Yeah. Coming back to your question, Pavan, when you say if this material is already created, right? For example, this throttle body is already in the system, and I am also attaching it to the VDS file. So what I attach to VDS file will not create any data on its own. So if you remember, we said that we just attach the VDS file, but these materials has to be created in the system. So if it is coming from the external system, then it is file and with unit of measure and everything related to it. So from the VDS, it's just linking it to the VDS is just linking the visual.
Now I'm understanding. Okay, I have a PLM system
Yeah.
where drawing and everything exists. I know the part numbers. First, the part numbers are to be created in SAP, and then this file is coming, and then this file, VDS file, is getting converted into EBOM. Correct?
Yes.
That should be the sequence.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
And VDS file is just a file used to link the materials to the visual instances. So it will have the visual instance, but it should know which material should be linked to it, right? So we are giving material IDs, and how we create that material ID is up to us. It can be either via any mass data creation or from external system. However it is, that is fine. But you should, at the end of the day, you should have the materials in your system. That is the idea there.
That is one more thing. You know, the component quantity is important. Now, in all these cases, in this case, the component quantity is always 1, or can we give more as the component quantity?
Because this is a visual file, the component quantity is going to be always 1. Because yes,
if I need to use more than 1, then I have to repeat it, right?
Yes. So every component is attached to one visual, right? So or one visual instance. So you need to repeat it. So that is why we have reused components that you see here.
Yes.
So for the weld nut, if I see my quantity will be whatever is the total of this, and you need to repeat it again. But for each instance, it should always be only 1. If it is more, then it's wrong. But it should. You can see that this is 16, but underneath you will not find any quantity, right? It is grouped the weld nut. So for
yes,
each,
I remember your example. In one of the files, the wheels were like 4 to 5 times repeated.
Yes.
Okay. That the first that cart example. Yes.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. All right, so yeah, this is how we create our EBOM. So we have our EBOM created. Let's see how to hand over our EBOM to MBOM as well. So maybe we can take a 5-minute break and be back, and then we will continue with the rest. I hope you can see the screen.
Yes.
So I'm just searching for this EBOM in the BOM app, and I'm trying to make some change here. So for this header BOM, if I search, I can see 2 EBOMs created in alternate 1. That is because there was an existing EBOM, but the plant was not assigned to it. So the EBOM that we created now has a plant assigned to it, which is why it is creating a new alternate. Now, if I create another EBOM with a different plant, it will create alternate 1, and it will not create alternate 2, right? So the check would be material and plant and usage should be the same in order for it to create a new alternate. So we have one alternate created, and with the plant is what we're using. So based on my example, what I want to do now is I will pick any one of the subassembly, say air box lower. This is in process. I will delete it. This is not required. So this is what we are doing. I here using create version option. So this is locked by me. Let me exit this page. So I'm creating version here. So this can be done externally as well. For whatever reason, let's say a new change is coming in with any change in the BOM, this will create a new, and you have a new version created for the EBOM. So what, this would probably not be right for example. So I'm trying to mark one of the BOM as a phantom so that we can see how is it going to be created. Okay. there are some errors. This is respect to the VMP changes that is in the system. So let's see anyhow, how is it going to be used? So I will take this subassembly airhouse filter, and under this subassembly, let's say I want to mark one of its component or the assembly air box lower as a phantom. So for that, I need to go to the assembly rather than that specific component. I need to go to the assembly and I will create a version here. I will say okay. So now I'm going to airbox lower, and this can be done either via BOM app, which is what our first approach is going to be. So here I will mark this as a phantom. So you can see that right now the phantom is no. I can either give 50 or there is the explosion type where I say phantom assembly. This is off. Okay, then let me give 50 here. There is an option to mark anything as phantom directly in the material as well. Fine, maybe go to. That is the same option that we saw here in the BOM where we say the procurement type is 50. You can also do it in the backend or directly in the MM01 transaction when you're creating the material. So I will mark this as phantom now, and this would mean that I will have a new BOM version created for air filter house assembly. Just having a look at our data. So I will go ahead and release this then. Okay, so I am going back to VMP. Now I have created my EBOM, right? So we might find that few items are missing because of the error that is coming up here. So let's see how is it going to be shown here. The planning scenario now that I will choose is EBOM to MBOM handover. So the planning scenario that would be applicable for me is a non-configurable BOM, and the source type is EBOM. So the other, if the source type is EBOM, then the other one option I have is configurable, which is not what we require. So I will choose the planning scenario as 05. And my header BOM here would be this. The usage is E in the source, alternate is 01, and target, I will keep the plant the same. So you see that right now it is by default when you click on create data effectivity option is selected, but if I click on enter, then the parameter effectivity option will be selected based on the BOM that we are creating. So now I do a save and start planning. Unfortunately, this VMP or the system has thrown an issue. So which is why you see that there are some errors coming up. This is probably because of there is some issue with the save and reload option here, which is what I did. Because there are errors coming up here, you see that it is not being reflected in our EBOM as well. So please give me a quick minute. I will just create in the similar way how we created the BOM. I will create another alternate. I think the issue came up because of the save and reload functionality. Ideally, it should not happen, but anyhow. Okay, while we are here, you see that this is collapsed, all right? So this happens when, because I already have a planning scope with this same plant and same material being created. So this will come as collapsed at the start. So you can right click on this and click on expand. This is in the document scenario. When the source is a document, you will have this option called expand. When the source is any EBOM, then we have different option. But for now, you can click on expand in such scenarios for all the subassemblies. This is happening because there is already a planning scope existing. So I will do a plan as design and save and exit. So now I'm creating a new planning scope. Maybe this is a functionality that you can see as well. Since I'm using the same material, same plant, but in a new planning scope, you can see that a new alternate is created. Intake header or the header assembly, which is this intake ASM, you can see alternative 2 is created for the same plant and the same material. So now if I reload this, now I mark for all release. So I'm saying mark everything for release, and again, I'm doing a save and exit. Just quickly double checking if there are any errors coming up. So you can see that there are no errors. That was some issue with the save and reload. So since I did a save and exit, so there are no errors and all the files are created properly. So when I create my EBOM to MBOM handover, instead of calling alternate 1, now I will call alternate 2. Yeah. So I will do the same create planning scope 05, which we saw. So I'm calling the same material, but instead of alternate 1, I will give alternate 2 here, and these will be the same. Save and start planning scope. So you can see that our BOM is created, and now you see that this is the EBOM, okay, which is how on based Of course, this will get created based on what EBOM we have defined in the previous handover. Now you see that here the assembly is collapsed, right? So here, since this is a EBOM, you will not find the expand option, but rather you will find the load EBOM option. So if I click on load EBOM, since my EBOM, I have multiple EBOMs, so I created alternate 1 and alternate 2. So this is not with respect to versions, but rather with respect to the alternates. So if you have multiple alternates available for a single EBOM that you have loaded, then you will find this load EBOM option. And from here, you have an option of either still choosing alternate 1 or choosing alternate 2. So now my header BOM for intake ASM is alternate 2, but I can still go ahead and choose alternate 1. But since that has issues, I will stick to my alternate 2. And for every alternate, the latest released version will be shown. So if you remember, for the previous alternate, we had created a version 2 and released it, which is why 2 is being shown here. But for every alternate, the latest released version will be shown. And if you double click on this, that particular alternate should be loaded here. So if just to cross check, you can add this here. So you can see alternate 2 of air filter housing is loaded. Similarly, we can load for the others. If there are no multiple BOMs here, and if there are no parallel planning scopes also created, then by default it will be loaded and it will not be collapsed. Let me do this for everything. So here again, the grouped nodes will be carried over to the EBOM as well. So this is my structure in the EBOM. I have loaded all the required EBOMs, alternates, whatever is required. So this again is a decision to be taken by the engineer who is doing the EBOM to MBOM handover. So the decision here is which EBOM alternate do you want to process, do you want to continue working on? That is a decision that again has to be done by the end user. So if you look at this airbox lower, in my source, I have marked it as a phantom. So you see that the phantom is checked here. Okay, so this is already a phantom. Okay, until here, do we have any questions? So we will see how to plan it after this. So we just created multiple alternates and how to load the BOM as well. Okay, so now we have a option here called toggle phantom assembly. So we have a visual. So this is clear. So for now, since the screen is small, I will hide the visuals. For now, this is a phantom, right? For some reason, when I'm planning, that is before I do a handover to the target. Now, if I hand it over to the target, okay, so this is because it is a phantom. We will see what that error means. But if I hand over upper box to the target, then this toggle phantom will be disabled. So which means before I hand it over to the target or before I plan this any assembly, if I select on the assembly, I will have the toggle phantom assembly option. What does toggle phantom assembly mean? If it is a phantom, it will mark it as a non-phantom. And if it is a non-phantom, it will mark it as a phantom. So now let me mark my air box upper as a phantom. You can see air box upper is marked as a phantom assembly, and the air box lower, I will mark it as non-phantom. So it is marked as non-phantom. So this can be done within the VMP itself. You can mark it as phantom or not. So whatever you're doing here, so if I mark airbox lower as a phantom, or let's say airbox upper as a phantom in VMP, it will be marked as phantom only in this planning scope. Outside of this planning scope, it will still remain a non-phantom assembly, right? But if you look at the airbox lower assembly, this was already a phantom when I loaded, which means I have marked it as a phantom either in the BOM level or the material level. So this is even outside VMP, this is going to remain a phantom. But any changes I make within VMP, marking it as a phantom or non-phantom, that change will be applicable only within VMP and only with respect to the planning scope. Which means that based on the change that you're making here, phantom or not phantom, you will be able to plan your MBOM for that particular planning scope. So maybe a MBOM of alternate 1, you will be able to create it based on the checks that you do here within VMP. So we have this option called toggle phantom, which is available and you can mark it as a phantom or not. So I will unmark airbox lower as phantom and I will mark airbox upper as phantom. This is my assembly that I have right now. And like we saw before, we can select each individual assembly and do a plan as design, right? But if it is marked as phantom, and if I click on plan as design, it will not let me plan it because of course it is a phantom, which means that I need to go one level higher than the phantom assembly. So I can either click on air filter housing assembly or the air intake assembly and plan it. What happens when you plan it? Because this is a phantom, the underneath instances or the components underneath will explode or will be flattened out, right? So let's look at an example here. I chose my air filter housing and I said plan as design. Under that, even though I have air box upper as an assembly, here you can see that air box upper is not to be seen. All its components are flattened out. So whatever components is there under it, if it's a group, the group will be flattened out as it is. So this is how the planning will happen. I hope this part is clear.
Sandra, why the lower BOM is not copied to this target panel? Is it because we have placed a phantom assembly in between?
No, it is copied, right? Air bob lower here.
No, that intake header.
That is because now I chose the air filter housing and then I did a plan as design. So this intake header does not come under air filter housing.
It's separate assembly.
Yeah, it's a separate assembly. So if I choose intake, this one air intake assembly, then the intake header should come here.
Okay. So in this case, the different sub-assemblies can be planned separately.
Yes. So I can plan it separately. Then I can, towards the end, I can also add it to the header bomb. Okay, so here I wanted to show another thing. Okay, so if you look at this effectivity that we have here, it is all 1 to 9999, right? Everything. But if you look at the VDS file, which I had loaded, this is the document to EBOM scenario. Ignore the errors, but if you look at the VDS file, I had given different effectivity, say 1 to 500 or 500 to 999, things like that. But why is it not reflecting in my EBOM? It is because of the change number that I've given. So because I had given it directly in my visual file, the change number I had given was not for 1 to 500, but rather the change number I had given was directly for 1 to 999. So here the priority will be for the change number. So based on the change number, whatever the effectivity is, it will be automatically considered when we're doing the handover, which is why you see that this effectivity is by default replaced to 1 to 999. So that is the same thing that you see here as well. All the effectivity will be the same 1 to 999. Now let me plan it a different way. Okay, air filter housing, I say do a plan as designed. So I have some of the phantom assembly getting flattened out. Now I take this air intake assembly, which is the header on top, and here I will plan few of my components. So the filter casing, I can add it directly here, and here intake header is a subassembly, right? So if I plan it, if I say plan as designed, it will get planned directly in the target. But if I move this, you can also do a drag and drop. So if I drag and drop from source to working panel, it will get planned as an instance and not a assembly. So if I commit, so you can see that the intake header will now be an instance and not an assembly. So this planning is also possible. Now I take all of this and say I do not want to plan the other intake header. I move the air intake assembly to the working panel, and I select the air filter housing, and I move it also to the working panel. So I can commit this change. So now everything will get added under one BOM hierarchy. Now if I take the air filter housing back to the working panel, so you can see that there is an error coming up. Component cannot be moved. It belongs to different source hierarchy. So in order to understand this hierarchical movement, what happens when this error comes up, the check that happens behind it is, it will first check if air filter is already planned, right? So its hierarchy is committed to the target. Now, and under intake ASM also, it is planned. Even though this component is not planned, this ASM is planned. So what I'm trying to do, if you look at this structure, I'm trying to take this component and I'm trying to put it under a sub-assembly of this current hierarchy. So with respect to a filter pleats, this is under a certain hierarchy. I am taking it and I'm adding it to a inner node. I'm kind of moving it inside one level, right? So it's basically, it means I'm moving a component from one hierarchy to another totally different hierarchy. And especially since this hierarchy is planned, this will not be allowed. So from here to here, if I say add filter pleats to the air filter housing, this hierarchical movement is not allowed. So you will get the related error there. So right now my only option is to move the filter pleats to the air intake assembly itself. So this hierarchical check also happens. So like I said, my one option is to move the filter pleats to air intake assembly, or now that my working panel is empty, if I choose the filter pleats from the target panel and I say add to working panel, it will add the filter pleats as a assembly. So now the component will be marked as the assembly. If you want to add a assembly as a component, you need to have a header already in the working panel, and you can select the assembly and move it to the working panel, which will add it as a component. If you want to add a component as an assembly, then you need to make sure the working panel is empty and move the component from source panel to the working panel. So now this is added as a assembly, and under that I can add any other external materials. External material, I mean material which is not already available in this current BOM hierarchy. I can choose any external material by going here, which says create, and create non-visual component. So this will not create a visual component. All the visual instance linking is done via the VDS file, but you have an option of adding a non-visual component or non-visual items to a visual file or to a visual EBOM. So it could be anything. You can even add existing material, or you can add a text item, which is what we will do here. Something. So since this is a unitized scenario, adding again the unitization values would be mandatory. So I have converted my instance to an assembly in the working panel. I have added a non-visual item, and I can commit this change. I can add the air filtered assembly now under the air intake assembly. And this means you're committing the changes. So this is the hierarchy I have now in place. So you can see if this is fine, if you need to make any changes. So whatever is already planned, right, you see that it is disabled here. So there are, of course, more functionalities here. We're just covering kind of the basic planning scenario. So whatever is planned, you'll find it disabled. This intake header we had not planned, so it is still enabled. So if I select any of the disabled node here, and there are different options. Okay, let's cover reconciliation a bit later. But there are other more direct options, like maybe copying a BOM item. So let's say I have filter casing. I want to copy. We will look at this copy BOM item with changes later. But I say copy BOM, and it will just, of course, copy the BOM and it will create a duplicate node here, or a copy of the node here. So we will again look at all this later. So I have planned. This is how I have planned my BOM. Now, if I develop the visual part, so you can see that because I did not plan my intake header, one of the intake header that will remain in the source, this is how my target will look like. So I am planning my BOM or the MBOM with only one of the intake header. Yeah. So this is what I want. And this, like we discussed, is a non-visual item. Okay, so you see that the icon is different here. So again, what does this mean? This square with yellowish thing, it means that it is a non-visual item. For the visual items, it will look like this. This means it's a non-visual end item. So if this is my BOM, I will click on save and exit. So you see that the MBOM has been created here with different, it says alternate one. So MBOM of alternate one will be created for the different assemblies that we have planned. So for the, it was airbox upper, it was planned as, because it was phantom, it was flattened out. So here in the messages, you will not see a message saying that, this, this BOM has been created, because of course that BOM will, in the MBOM side, that BOM will not get created because it was a phantom in the EBOM. I will say okay, and let me reload it. So we have our visual file, and if you look at this is the visual viewer integrated with the visual structure manager, which we spoke about and which is required for VMP. So you will be able to perform a few actions here as well. Yeah, so the buttons would be here, which is maybe fit to view, or you can show all. If you want to hide something, you can hide selected. So you can hide selected, or you can isolate the selected one and see how it looks. So all these functionalities are possible within the VMP with respect to the visual file that is available here. There are more functionalities with respect to loading a MBOM. We will look at that later. And all the warning signs that you see, it is with respect to the calculation that happens with effectivity and quantity. We will also discuss that later in detail. You see that there is an option called display BOM item. So you can use that to display all the BOM items. So maybe when we saw it in the 1909 system, under BOM items, okay, let me show it here. When we edited a BOM item, you must have seen that we had only the effectivity values there. But now you can see that you have most of the BOM related, or most of the fields from the BOM application coming up here. Most of the fields from the CS01 transaction will be reflected here, which means that you will be, in the older releases, you were not able to make any changes, BOM related changes directly in the VMP. Here, of course, you can make the required change. So if this is my BOM, I will, again, I have option for mark for release all. I will do mark for release all. And of course, you have this option called unmark for release. So if unmark for release is specific for each assembly level, so if for any specific assembly level you need to unmark it for release, let me say for filter pleats, then you can do that, and the rest will remain as mark for release. The BOM is marked for release. Do we see that here? Okay. So ideally, even though you are getting the warning message, you should have also got a message saying that this is marked for release. But nevertheless, we have marked everything for release and unmarked the filter pleats for release. So if we save and exit, you can see that these have been released, and filter pleats, it's not released, so it's basically updated, but there's no change. So there will be no changes made here, but the others have been marked for release. You also see the messages such as attribute discrepancy. We will of course discuss a little bit on this in the upcoming session. So this is a simple handover from EBOM to MBOM with having a phantom scenario in between and planning, how to convert an assembly to a node or a node to an assembly. This is how the functionalities can be done. And if you want to plan individual or parallel assemblies, so we saw how to do that as well, and to load different alternates in the EBOM, which is also supported here. So these are a few of the functionalities that is available in VMP. There are a little more complicated or complex functionalities available as well. We will have a session on that tomorrow. For today, are there any questions based on what we have covered?
Kind of one point here. Can we have that videos which you're trying, and tomorrow can any one of us, one person from our side, attendees, can you try this in 1909 case?
Yes, of course, you can try it out.
Anyways, you are working on this since 7 8 years. So
sorry, your voice is a bit feeble.
Sorry, I mean you are working on this piece since a long time, so now you are really good at it. But we need to make to that speed. And this is again, it seems very important feature of PEO, which will be very helpful to the customers. So can you please share the videos files? So we will also try to load it into this KS1 1909 and try. If not, then let us see as interactive kind of thing.
Yeah, Ankit, have you shared that file?
Yeah, yesterday there was email from Ankit.
Yeah, there was.
Yeah, correct.
So yeah, you will file.
Visual file it is there already. Yeah, it is.
VDS files there. So I have just put a table with the assignment on who can take which number. Individual VDS file for every person, so that you can work individually. So you can pick which is assigned to your name, and you can try out the same scenario.
Good. One final thing, see the change number came in between. So now if we want to take this change number forward with approval, so should it happen before the changes are made, or should it happen the changes are made and before it is released to the manufacturing? Okay, this change number is actually only with respect to effectivity. So this is not the traditional change, or this doesn't follow the traditional process of the change number in the maybe the data effective scenarios where you use the workflow and everything. So this is just to record the effectivity, because going forward we will see that when we make changes to the effectivity, there is a lot of reconciliation things coming up. So in order to kind of record the changes happening with respect to the effectivity is where the change number is used.
this is kind of internal to VMP, and the end user will not have to have any manual intervention here. So from our point of view, we will look into the change record. There we will have the workflows in place. That again we will cover separately. So, but for us, we will look into the change record. But the change numbers will not be considered in PO. So this I showed as part of just for your understanding that the change number will be used to record the effectivity that is used. This is kind of maybe the internal operation that is done in VMP, but it is not the traditional change numbers what you use for the data effective scenarios. Maybe when we cover the change record, you will have a better understanding of all the workflows and everything.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
So yes, so please do a hands-on on the visual file provided to you. You can follow the same steps that we discussed today, and of course, if there are any issues, we can have it cover it in the upcoming sessions.
One request, Sandra. You see, I have got the PDM system name. Okay. We are working there. I don't know. I mean, the doubt is the 3D experience is anyways licensed from the PDM interface is licensed. 4 options are there. Now the problem is only is it the SolidWorks PDM Professional 2020? That is the PDM name. I will write in the chat box. So is it possible? Can you please check? This is available? This interface is available through PDMI? Because we were in kind of assumption was there PEO is a kind of at least it will solve along with other features. It will also have the feature related to master data. At least creating the basic data 1, 2, and classification. I mean, that is what one of the difference that we were thinking from CDON. If you are aware of CDON, CIDEON.
Okay.
Okay, so CDON is a German company, and nowadays SAP has. I don't know. They are not available on their licenses also not available on S4. I don't know what's going on there. So that is why we did not prefer CDON in place. We have promoted this PEO, but this master data feature, if PDM is not there, then I think we have to look something else.
Okay, I will have a look at it from my end and see what information I can gather on this.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So yeah, please do hands on, and we will get back with questions maybe tomorrow, and we can have them addressed. So yeah, that is all from my side. All right, then. Thank you everyone, and have a good day.